Did you know that there's a plant strong enough to replace plastic, oil, and building materials? That the same plant has been cultivated for industrial purposes for over 12,000 years. Yet it's been classified as a Schedule I controlled substance drug by the U.S. government. Nope, not marijuana, hemp. Recently, Kentucky Agriculture Commissioner James Cormer has requested a legal review of the steps necessary for hemp regulation if the federal ban is lifted on growing the crop. That's right. Kentucky could soon be reviving an industry that only a century ago was considered to be the most important cash crop and vital to the strength of the U.S. economy. So let's backtrack a little bit and talk about what hemp actually is. Throughout human existence, hemp has been used as an important source of fuel, clothing, shelter, and even food for people all over the world. In this country, industrial hemp was widely cultivated since America's first settlers arrived in the early 1600s. In fact, even our founding fathers acknowledged hemp's enormous benefits. George Washington, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson all grew hemp on their private farms. And Jefferson was even quoted once as saying hemp is one of the greatest important substances of our nation. The Declaration of Independence itself was even drafted on paper derived from hemp. So what happened? How did one of the most versatile and adaptable species of crops in the world also become one of the most politically polarizing agricultural resources? Well, in the early 20th century, the plant became labeled a threat so dangerous that it should be wiped out. But it wasn't dangerous to anyone or anything except the industries that it could phase out of existence. So what did the establishment do to ensure their allegiance to the very industries they serve? Well, they did what they do best. They lied and smeared hemp through a propaganda campaign that associated the plant with marijuana. And in 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act redefined hemp as a narcotic, which required farmers to obtain a special tax stamp to grow the crop. By 1970, the Controlled Substances Act made growing the crop without a DEA-issued permit strictly illegal. Because of the government crackdown on the crop, it has a negative association. And at this point, you still might be confused because of years of being brainwashed to think that hemp is exactly the same as marijuana, or that its close association with it must classify it as a drug. But this couldn't be farther from the truth. Just check out the Congressional Research Service report on hemp that states, quote, although marijuana is also a variety of cannabis, it is genetically distinct from industrial hemp, and it is further distinguished by its use and chemical makeup. So, hemp is genetically distinct from the drug, marijuana. In fact, if you smoked an entire garbage bag full of hemp, you wouldn't get high. Yet the plant remains illegal under U.S. federal law. And like I said before, not because it's a danger to people, but because it's a danger to corporations. In the early 20th century, hemp competed heavily with the cotton and paper industry. Because paper made from trees had to compete against environmentally friendly hemp products, the paper industry was at risk to suffer. So William Hearst, a New York State congressman and one of the biggest newspaper publishers in America, launched a campaign against hemp. He used his publication to smear the public's perception of the crop, which at the same time was threatening his successful paper company. In fact, this very campaign is where the term yellow journalism derived from. But this was in the 1920s. How is the propaganda still working today? Because the threat hemp poses isn't limited to paper. Reviving the industry could potentially devastate the profits of huge corporations that manufacture lumber, fossil fuels, steel, alcohol, and even food, among many other things, including this. In 1941, Henry Ford even built a car made almost entirely from hemp. The frame of the car was 12 times lighter than steel and 10 times stronger. Not only that, but the car was powered by hemp seed oil. Do I even have to explain the threat that this technology would pose to giant oil companies? Processed hemp also creates one of the strongest fibers we know of, providing all natural materials to build homes, ships, trains, planes, and automobiles, and practically indestructible clothing. Furthermore, hemp seed oil can be made into lotions and skin creams. The practical applications for this plant are limitless, and the reason it remains illegal is simple. It's just one giant push to preserve the profits of corporations that poison our planet, destroy our forests, and bankrupt the world. But this all could change if recent efforts in Kentucky are any indication, and if moves by a few key members in the U.S. Senate succeed. hemp could soon be removed from the government's list of Schedule I controlled substances. The hemp industry could very well be revived back to being America's #1 cash crop. And that's one step closer to succeeding against a model of profit, greed, and control that sadly defines this country today.
This plant thrives without herbicides, reinvigorates the soil, requires less water than cotton, matures in 3 to 4 months, can yield 4 times as much paper per acre as trees. The seeds of this plant can be used for beer, flour, feed, dietary fiber, snacks, non-dairy milk and cheese, baking. The oil of this plant can be used for cooking, salad dressing, dietary supplements, body care products, fuel, detergents, spreads, paint. The fiber of this plant can be used for fabric, insulation, carpeting, paneling, pulp and paper, recycling additive, automotive parts, animal bedding, and mulch.
This is, in my view, a textbook example of a regulation that flunks the common sense test. There is government regulation on the books today that prevents America's farmers from growing industrial hemp. And what's worse is this regulation is hurting job creation in rural America and increasing our trade deficit. When my colleagues get, I think, more information about this outlandish, outrageous restriction on free enterprise, I think most of my colleagues are going to say that the restriction on industrial hemp is really a poster child for dumb regulation. The only thing standing in the way of taking advantage of this very profitable crop is a lingering misunderstanding about its use.
There is a link below to easily write your senators in Congress and ask them to become a co-sponsor of S-3501, a companion bill to H.R. 1831, the Industrial Hemp Farming Act of 2011. At this page, just enter your zip code and it will provide you with information in your area as well as some suggested text that you can send via email or printed letter. It also provides a link to see the exact text of the companion bill.
Well, something old is new again. A new electric car made of hemp is being developed by a group of Canadian companies working in conjunction with the Canadian government. The Kestrel will be prototyped and tested this fall by Calgary-based Motive Industries Incorporated, a high-tech auto manufacturer. Now, this compact car, which seats 4, will have a top speed of 90 kilometers or about 56 miles an hour and a range of up to 100 miles before needing to be recharged. The car's body will be made of an impact-resistant composite material produced from mats of, you guessed it, hemp. The hemp is also being grown in Canada. Now, Henry Ford was the first to build a car made of hemp fiber and resin back in the 1930s. That was more than half a century ago, but the idea wasn't developed much further as cannabis prohibition went into effect in 1937 and car manufacturers favored other materials such as steel. But in the last 25 years, fiberglass and carbon fiber-based composites have gained popularity as materials for automobiles because they are strong and lighter weight. But producing composites from glass or carbon requires intense heat and multiple chemical processes, making them very energy intensive. In contrast, plant-based fibers like hemp is grown in a field using only the energy of the sun. As a structural material, hemp is about twice the strength of other plant fibers. It doesn't require much water or pesticide, and it also produces a high yield and grows well in Canada. Nathan Armstrong, president of Motive Industries Incorporated, adds, and I quote, "It's illegal to grow cannabis in the U.S., so it actually gives Canada a bit of a market advantage," end quote. The U.S. does, however, allow the import of processed hemp. We here at Cannabis Planet applaud the effort of the Canadian government and their private industry partners. But we can't help but question the wisdom of our own government for continuing to prohibit cannabis, particularly in these trying financial times. This amazing plant can be used as a food, fuel, fiber, and medicine. It creates new jobs, promotes industry, and generates new tax revenues. It's time for the politicians in Washington to wake up and smell the, well, you know where I'm going with this. For Cannabis Planet, I'm Pat Finnerty. Now make it a great evening.
At the foot of the barren hills of Gangu County stand a cluster of workshops. An array of colorful hemp shoes displayed on shiny glass shelves looks out of place against the shop's dusty surroundings. From slippers and sandals to sneakers, the handmade hemp shoes were originally designed in Italy, France, and Japan, even though many of the local craftsmen know little about these countries. Hemp is widely grown in China's northwest regions, especially in Gansu, where locals make rope with hemp fibers or weave hemp strands into sandals. Chinese mythology says Fuxi, an ancient king born in Gansu, was the first to use hemp to make robes and shoes. The Red Army also made and worn hemp shoes during the Revolutionary era several decades ago. Wang Yiwu, owner of the factory, said the skill of making hemp shoes has been passed down in his family for generations.
麻鞋，最早的是家庭作坊式的，就是自己做麻鞋，自己穿用的，就是没形成商品。可能这个麻鞋我不记得了，反正我自小我就是穿麻鞋长大的。但是听大人们讲，这个我们祖祖辈辈都是穿麻鞋的。
Wang started his hemp shoe business in the 1990s. Sales were limited to nearby counties until a U.S. businessman saw his shoes at a local fair.
有一个美国人，对这个麻边鞋呢很感兴趣，然后呢他自己，刚开始他自己设计，根据他的理念，把咱们原来的这个传统的麻鞋有一点这个进行了大的改进和改观。
Wang named his shoes brand Da Mo Xing, meaning walking in the desert, and sold 10,000 pairs to the United States in 1996 in cooperation with the businessman. It was his first deal with an overseas buyer. The wholesale price was $10 per pair. He was so surprised as the hemp shoes were previously only purchased by local farmers at a much lower price.
10个美金，当时的那个美金的那个汇率换算的话，就是8块多钱人民币嘛，8块多啊，我记得是8块多，啊，所以就相当于现在的80多人民币，啊，那是在90年代的时候，啊，那个效益也很好。
Since then, the factory has received more overseas orders, and Wang has hired 3 designers from Italy, France, and Japan to work for him. Wang said his shoes have the advantages of being light, airy, and the capability to kill germs due to the hemp's alkaline nature. The shoes have been a hit at shopping malls in Italy, the UK, France, and Japan. The factory made 2 million pairs of hemp shoes in 2012, with more than 90% sold in overseas markets. The factory raked in more than $3 million in foreign trade last year.
Take a look at the exterior of the house. This is hempcrete. It's a mixture of hemp, lime, and water. And inside the house, there are a lot more green features we can show you.
We heard that we could have a really great neighborhood party if it ever caught on fire.
Karen Korp and her husband, former Asheville Mayor Russ Martin, have heard their share of jokes about their new home.
The floor plan is completely open with 14-foot walls.
Now the couple has the last laugh as they show off their hemp house.
It was about $100.
That's last month's cooling bill for the 3,400 square foot home.
The insulating factor and thermal capabilities are fantastic.
There's even more green materials inside the home. The walls and the doors are all made out of recycled paper, only a couple of inches thick and very breathable.
Breathable like the hempcrete, which we first saw when the house was under construction in November.
It's a built-in air filter, which for myself and my company is our main focus, is air quality and the non-toxicity and chemical-free aspects of material.
This is our bathroom, and it's wonderful. We have the LED lights in here, fluorescence over here. The wall is of a natural stone.
While the home sits on expensive land off Town Mountain Road, the couple says it only cost $133 per square foot to build the house. They're hoping more people will follow their lead.
I think this is really the wave of the future in looking at using renewable and recyclable materials that are a lot healthy, better for the environment, and certainly for living.
Recent months, there has been a push to legalize hemp farming in America. Some say it's clean and a sustainable crop that's easy to grow and will help the ailing economy. Others say legalizing it will only complicate the country's current war on drugs. KUSI's Bridget Naso has more on the controversial crop in a two-part special report, Hemp in America.
A one-man protest caught the nation's attention this spring. A local businessman and activist, David Bronner, locked himself in a steel cage with hemp plants from Canada in front of the White House. His mission, to legalize industrial hemp.
I'm here putting my liberty at risk. All I'm asking is, I want to send $100,000 to American farmers. You know, we want to send our money to American farmers.
But why would the president of a soap company in Escondido be at the forefront of this issue? Because he's the president of Dr. Bronner's soap company, founded by Bronner's grandfather in Germany in the 1800s. He brought the company to Southern California in the late 1940s. The soap has changed very little since it was first created. It's all natural with no preservatives, and the key ingredient is hemp seed oil.
It's really high in the omega-3 essential fatty acid. This is a triple unsaturated fatty acid. It's very smooth and emollient on the skin, makes our lather much less drying and much smoother, and has been a key part of the success of the soaps.
Bronner says in the past 10 years, business has grown from $5 million to $50 million a year. He says Americans want to buy natural and sustainable products, but Bronner can't buy his staple ingredient, hemp oil, from growers in the U.S.
Every year we import 20 tons of hemp seed oil from Canada and send well over $100,000 to Canadian farmers. And collectively, the American industry is sending tens of millions of dollars to Canada, China, Europe, whose farmers are allowed to cultivate and process industrial hemp.
Sure, a change of policy would benefit him financially, but this, he says, is about ending the war on what he calls a harmless crop.
Obama came in, promising that his policy was going to be science and reason-based, rational. I mean, what could be more, rational than, re-commercializing industrial hemp in a recession?
Hemp farming is not new to American farmers. It had been legal for years, even farmed by our first president.
George Washington was a hemp farmer. Thomas Jefferson was a hemp farmer. The first law of Jamestown was it was illegal not to grow hemp on your farm. It was that important of a crop.
Used to make clothing, paper products, and even covered wagons. Bronner says hemp is still used today by manufacturers of German cars. So what happened to hemp in America? The stigma began in the 1930s at the end of Prohibition. The government and the media, says Bronner, campaigned to scare the public, and competitive industries fed the fuel to get rid of hemp.
You had these drug warriors, out of work, looking for a job. Industries like timber and cotton, threatened by hemp as a competitive crop.
And as a result, except for a short time during World War II to help with the war effort, hemp was banned. But Bronner says the hysteria over hemp has been overblown. You can't get high on hemp.
For millennia, they've been bred separately and optimized for different things. Industrial hemp is optimized for seed and fiber, whereas marijuana varieties are optimized for THC in the flower. Industrial hemp cannot get you high.
And with the current economy, Bronner and even some lawmakers say it's time to allow hemp farming in America again. Bridget Naso, KUSI News.
And coming up in part 2 of our series tomorrow, Hemp in America, KUSI's Bridget Naso has more on the effort to make hemp legal in the U.S. and why politicians and law enforcement want little to do with the controversial topic. In part one of our special report, Hemp in America, we examined the history of hemp farming and the effort by one local businessman to legalize it. Well, tonight we have more on why some lawmakers support the idea as one of the solutions to our ailing economy. But as KUSI's Bridget Naso tells us, there are still a lot of people who want to keep this crop from growing on U.S. soil.
A local businessman and advocate for legalizing hemp farming locked himself in a steel cage this spring outside of the White House to call attention to the issue. David Bronner's company, Dr. Bronner Natural Soaps, uses hemp oil. But hemp is illegal to grow in the U.S. because it's classified as a controlled substance, and Bronner has to import it from Canada. Now he says it's time for the government to change its policy and recognize that hemp and marijuana are very different plants.
It's just ridiculous that this industry, which is growing every year, is doubling. We just continue to give to the Canadians and the Chinese and the Europeans, are just laughing at us.
Legal expert Dan Gillian says Bronner is technically correct.
Hemp is a plant. It's closely aligned and similar to marijuana, but it's a totally separate plant.
And Gillian says people don't get high on hemp.
Marijuana would have somewhere between 5 and 20% THC in it, whereas hemp only has 1%. So it really, if you smoke this, you get a headache, you wouldn't get high.
For centuries, the two plants have been grown for distinctly different purposes. Hemp is industrial, says Bronner, used for fabric like cotton, only it's cleaner to grow, and also for paper, which saves trees.
Industrial hemp is optimized for seed and fiber, whereas marijuana varieties are optimized for THC in the flower.
And Bronner says this kind of farming is much different than growing marijuana for medicinal or recreational purposes. To grow industrial hemp, you need a lot of land in order to make it worthwhile for the farmer.
Typically, marijuana is grown in smaller areas and far apart to help the flower grow. If it's grown in larger areas illegally, it's typically more easy to find by law enforcement, like this bust. Last week on 40 acres of private property near Warner Springs, it netted $40 million worth of the drug. And growing the plants together, says Bronner, would ruin the hemp and the marijuana because of cross-pollination. The leaders of several states, including North Dakota, know the difference, says Bronner, and want to make it legal to farm. However, recently Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon added an amendment to the recent farm bill that would make hemp farming legal. Not one U.S. senator signed it. Legal expert Dan Gillian says that's no surprise.
The politicians, I think they're just scared, really, to do anything. They don't want to be the guy that legalized hemp, because the perception by the public is hemp is the same as marijuana.
And given the dangers surrounding drug trafficking, law enforcement wants nothing to do with legalizing this plant, given its close association with marijuana. And the local DEA office did not want to comment on our story.
Some people would say this is not a good idea given the current drug crisis in America. What would you say to those people?
In China, where they'll shoot you if you have marijuana, they grow, tens of thousands of acres of industrial hemp.
Bronner's hope is that now that the state of California has legalized medicinal marijuana, it will only be a matter of time before hemp farming becomes legal, possibly through a standalone bill in Congress or state by state.
13 states want to grow. They have laws on the books ready to go. We just need the federal government to get out of the way.
But until that day, Bronner and other companies like his will have to import hemp products and continue to send their dollars overseas. Bridget Naso, KUSI News.
This is the WB11 News at 10.
And now for something completely different. Whether you love tofu or hate it, there's a new plant protein to consider. It's hemp. Dr. Mike is here now with more on what is likely to be the next food to take the health food industry by storm. Dr. Mike.
Yeah, Peter, it's a terrific concept as a food group. It does contain fat, but they're good fats, and there's tons of protein. But the problem is the stigma behind hemp, because it's often associated with getting high.
For most people, you'll ask about hemp. Either it's an I don't know.
Never heard of it. The hemp seed? Never heard of it.
Or it's something illicit.
Is hemp a drug?
Kinda, sorta. But not really.
But hear the word hemp, and they first their mind goes to marijuana. The whole marijuana issue, the industrial hemp plant is from the same family of plants. But the industrial hemp plant is way down the chain on the levels of THC. It has microscopic levels of THC, less than 4 parts per billion, where the average marijuana plant is 10 to 15% THC. So it really has nothing to do with it. It's like putting poppy seeds in the same category as heroin.
What hemp is a seed that has amazing health benefits.
The hemp seed nut, these little seeds are about the size of a grain of wheat. Inside is this nice soft little meat. It's about 30% protein. That's actually more protein than meat. And on the fat side, it's actually 50% fat. Now when we hear that, we say, well, that's a lot of fat. Of course, these are essentials as well. And the good fats are absolutely critical for the body's health. Every cell membrane in our body is coated with fat.
In fact, hemp seeds have all 10 essential amino acids and all essential fatty acids, and are a rich source of the valuable omega-3 fatty acids.
Well, hemp seeds, you can actually have it ground and put it into smoothies, or you put it on salads, put it on yogurt, and it also is available as an oil. So the hemp oil is wonderful as a salad dressing. You wouldn't want to get it to a very high temperature, but I put it in my pasta, I put it on vegetables that I've steamed into stir fries after it's cooked.
You can use the meal to make flour for cookies and bread. You can even make veggie burgers and cheese from the hemp seed. So, would you try hemp?
No, I'm not 100% sure what it is, so my answer is I don't know.
Try it. You'll like it.
Apparently, the history of hemp is very interesting. Until the 1880s, it was the most domesticated crop on the planet. In fact, the founding fathers of this country all grew hemp, and the farmers who were given land were forced to grow a certain amount of hemp because it was such an important part of everyone's life. Back to 2006, those producing hemp products say look for an ensuing hemp explosion. For more information on this and other health stories, go to our website at WB11.com/Dr. Mike.
And you have a lot of hemp products here.
Are you ready to try it?
Yeah,
a
little show and tell. Stock in this stuff?
It doesn't contain tetrahydrocannabis.
You don't smoke it, in other words.
You don't smoke
yes.
it.
You sprinkle this on your
it's
salad.
It's like worrying about poppy seeds, you know, and cocaine. Poppy seeds are not an issue.
They just don't go together.
You know
Thank you very much.
Actually, it's very good. It's very nutty.
Then you just sprinkle it on your salad or whatever?
It's heavy in omega-3 fatty acids. High in protein.
Doesn't taste like salt, but it kind of looks like it does.
Let me see. I feel completely the same. I'm not affected
and
in any way
it comes in a chocolate.
Let's see the chocolate. You know, you got chocolate, I'll have some. Here you
it's
go.
Not, but it's not grown here in the U.S. It's illegal to grow here in the U.S.
You can't grow
it,
so you have to import it.
Is it illegal?
It's the old stigma about it. Because of you, they're worried about you.
All right,
we appreciate it. Thank you very much. Can I have the cap? I'll be taking this home.
Oregon State plans on offering a unique class this spring, and as far as they know, it'll be the first of its kind in the world. The course will teach students all about industrial hemp. Hemp is a non-psychoactive relative of marijuana. It used to be widely grown in the U.S., but has been banned by the federal government for more than 50 years. The class will be offered online through the university's College of Forestry. The department says that hemp is an extremely useful, renewable resource worth exploring. It can be used to make rope, clothing, food, even buildings.
Wood is still the largest volume renewable material that there is, but there's a lot of interest in other renewable materials, and that includes hemp. The hemp market right now is in the neighborhood of $500 million a year in the U.S. alone, and all of that raw material has to be imported.
Currently, there are 2 bills going through Congress attempting to make the cultivation of hemp legal again. It is legal in Canada, and many states have approved industrial hemp at the state level, including Oregon. There will be 40 spots in the class, and registration starts February 24th.
What would have happened if you had called your dad in college and told him you were going to be taking a class that focused on hemp?
I suspect the checks would have ceased. I think.
Or there was going to be more checks.
Yeah.
I'm Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky.
And can you tell us why you support hemp, why Kentucky, and why now?
Well, I think it'd be a great new product for Kentucky farmers, and I've been a supporter of hemp for a long time. I'm wearing my hemp shirt today, and I just think there are a lot of uses that could be, and why not have another agricultural product?
And can you speak to the bipartisan effort in Congress and the prospects for passing hemp legislation at the federal
level? I have a bill with Senator Wyden that would allow states to make the decision. So if we get this passed today in Frankfurt, or over the next couple of weeks in Frankfurt, my hope is that we can pass the legislation in Washington that allow all states to do this. If we don't pass that, though, I'm also going to ask the president for a waiver. And there is some precedent for the president allowing waivers for certain things. So there's a chance that if we legalize this in Kentucky, we could short circuit and not have to have a bill in Washington, but give them a waiver, and maybe they could start growing hemp within a year.
And would you expect that Senator McConnell may also become a co-sponsor?
I'm hoping so. He came out publicly for hemp and for what we're doing here in Frankfurt today, last week or 2 weeks ago in Washington, and he's an important ally to have.
Thank you so much for your time.
All right.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Thank you.
All right.
Kentucky's governor says he needs to talk to law enforcement before he decides whether to sign the industrial hemp bill that cleared the legislature late last night.
WDRB's Lauren Smith explains in the meantime, hemp supporters are making plans for the state to cash in on the still illegal crop.
With the hemp bill now awaiting Governor Beshear's signature, the focus begins to shift from Frankfurt to Washington, D.C. The hemp bill, SB 50, was thought to be dead until lawmakers passed it in the closing minutes of the session. It gives the Department of Agriculture the authority to regulate and license hemp production if the crop is legalized by the federal government.
People want Kentucky to change directions and be bold and be a leader for once, and that's what Senate Bill 50 symbolized.
Hemp was once a cash crop in Kentucky until the federal government banned it decades ago. Senator Rand Paul today repeated his commitment to lifting that ban.
And we're trying to get it to where each state can make their own decision on that. So we'll keep fighting that battle. But in the meantime, I'd like to get a waiver and let Kentucky immediately start doing it within the next year.
And that's the next step. Once the Kentucky bill becomes law, the state would make its case to the Obama administration for a waiver to begin growing the crop right away.
I'm going to try to send a letter to the president and ask him to give Kentucky a waiver. We could be one of the first states to grow hemp. That'd be great.
And I think we now can head to Washington with a lot of credibility and a very credible regulatory framework that will allow us to be granted a waiver.
And Comer says there are 8 companies ready to begin the business of processing and manufacturing hemp products in Kentucky.
They're very excited. They're hopeful the governor will sign the bill into law.
Commissioner Comer says he hopes Kentucky farmers can have hemp in the ground by the growing season next spring. At the state capitol in Frankfurt, Lawrence Smith, WDRB News.
The push to allow Kentucky farmers to grow hemp for industrial uses for products like clothing, paper, and petroleum today got its biggest endorsement yet. WHAS 11's political editor Joe Arnold is just back from the state capitol in Frankfurt with today's developments. Joe?
Well, Doug, U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell says he's had long discussions with Senator Rand Paul and Ag Commissioner James Comer on the economic benefits of industrialized hemp, and concluding, you can see here, I'm convinced. McConnell says that allowing its production will be a positive development for Kentucky's farm families and economy. Commissioner Comer has assured me that his office is committed to pursuing industrialized hemp production in a way that does not compromise Kentucky law enforcement's marijuana eradication efforts or in any way promotes illegal drug use. Now, those are the precise concerns of some law enforcement leaders who warn this hemp effort is misguided. It would complicate drug enforcement work and may lead to the legalization of marijuana. Agriculture Commissioner James Comer says McConnell's endorsement is a, quote, game changer. This comes after prominent Tea Party lawmakers were already on board.
That's pretty mainstream, and I just think it shows that this effort has broad-based support.
Does it help the overall effort, you think, in this session that he's behind it now?
Well, sure it does. Anytime you have a United States senator endorsing something, it helps the effort.
John Schuchel telling me today hemp would actually help fight marijuana growers because cross-pollination between those two related plants would only weaken the marijuana. Even if Kentucky approves this hemp measure, it would still need a waiver from the federal government, which bans hemp plants. That's another area where McConnell might be able to help. Joe Arnold, WHAS 11 News.
Danny is here in this part of the studio now with Made in Canada for this week, and this time it's all about a Manitoba company that grows hemp. But let's be clear right off the bat, we are not we are not about to go to pot here on CBC News Morning, right? Let's be clear.
All right.
All right.
This is, in fact, the story about a food business. It is a food business that was founded by three men, Mike Fata, Martin Moravchik, and Alex Shawayaski, who saw future in hemp. Now, when you think about hemp, the chances are you do think of something other than food. But Manitoba Harvest sells edible oil, powder, and milk, all made from the seeds of the humble and very misunderstood hemp plant.
Hemp's actually been food for over 5,000 years. The seed is very healthy and very similar to flax. So where people weren't familiar with flax 40 or 50 years ago, people weren't familiar with hemp up until about 10 years ago because it wasn't available in Canada.
Hemp wasn't available in Canada because of the other product with which it's associated.
In order to grow marijuana, you just grow the female version of the plant. When we grow industrial hemp, we grow male and female. When the male sheds its pollen early in the cycle, the females all stop producing THC and they start producing seed. It doesn't make the high potency THC, high marijuana, or high THC marijuana crop that people think about.
On those grounds, Martin argued that the Canadian government should change the Controlled Substances Act to allow Manitoba farmers to grow hemp. In 1998, he was successful.
I had been in business for many years before that, and I saw an opportunity in a ground floor basis. I wasn't, at the ground floor for flax, but hemp still hadn't been done by anybody, and so it started to become part of the Manitoba agricultural economy.
Today, Manitoba Harvest sources its hemp from 21 farmers who are shareholders in the company. All the crops are certified organic or pesticide-free. Pesticide-free meaning they can still use non-organic fertilizer. After the seed is harvested, it's brought down to the plant where it's made into 5 staple products: shelled hemp seeds, hemp seed oil, hemp butter, protein powder, and their latest and most successful invention, hemp milk.
The hemp seed itself tastes very nutty, similar to a sunflower seed. So the milk and the oil and all the products have a nutty flavor, where soy tastes beany. A lot of people don't like it because it tastes beany, but the people that like hemp like it because of its nutty flavor.
Customers also appreciate what are said to be the amazing health benefits of hemp seed, which contains similar omega-3 and 6 fatty acids to those found in fish.
We'd have ladies, senior citizen ladies, that were phoning and saying that they felt so good because their arthritis wasn't bothering them anymore because they've been taking 2 tablespoons of our hemp seed oil every day. We have people that had eczema or psoriasis and they're being healed by eating a diet that's rich in essential fats.
Mike is one of the converts, having learned the hard way about how vital essential fats are to the human body.
I was obese, up to 300 pounds, and when I was 18, I changed my lifestyle, changed my diet around, and lost over 120 pounds. But through that process, I went on a no-fat diet, which was very popular in the early 1990s, and almost died from cutting all the fat out of my diet.
A growing recognition of the importance of omega fats led to meteoric growth for the company. In its first year, it sold about $50,000 worth of hemp-based products. Today, it sells more than $5 million.
It really is a global market for us because we are producing a product and can easily ship anywhere in the world. Obviously, our focus right now is Canada and the U.S. because it is such a large marketplace and very easy to market to and to distribute to, but our business will keep expanding elsewhere in the world.
If you want to learn more about Manitoba Harvest and their products, you can visit their website at www.manitobaharvest.com.
I've already learned a lot. I had a botany reminder on male and female plants, and I got an explainer on hemp and how it works. Now, since we have been clear, there is no drug content.
We will not be sampling anything illicit.
No, I'd love to have a taste of this.
Okay.
I've actually not tried it, so let's try this.
This is the I'm going to taste it too. First time. This is the hemp milk.
Chocolate. We thought that might be might ease our experimentation. You've not had this either?
Mm-mm.
Vegetable-y.
It is a little nutty, which is what they said. I have to say, I do like this better than soy milk. I'm not sure if it's the chocolate talking.
That's good. When in doubt, go with chocolate.
Hemp seeds we have. I don't know. This might be problematic with the lipstick. No I'm thinking.
Okay.
Are they okay? And then there's hemp butter as well, which is good for those parents who have kids at peanut-free school, right? Which is everybody. It drives me crazy. And yeah,
I like
protein
that. The hemp
powder.
seeds are very good. You can put that on yogurt. I bet that'd be nice. These poor guys would probably have to explain every day their work, don't you think? All the jokes about it.
10 years to get the law changed so that they could even market the product. So yeah, it's a lot of work. They're
no
quite dedicated.
Halloween treats though from this company.
I'm going to give this out to anyone who comes to my house.
Hemp seeds for all.
Is getting hemp seeds.
All right, Danny, thank you for this week's Made in Canada. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any more ideas for Made in Canada on future installments, we're waiting for your note. Our address is CBC News Morning at cbc.ca.
Hemp is one of the oldest crops known to humankind, and some historians believe the need for material to make ropes and sails for the Royal Navy was the real reason behind the establishment of Australia as a penal colony more than 2 centuries ago. Now hemp is making a comeback of sorts, with licensed production in most states supplying growing markets in masonry, fiberglass replacements and textiles. But a push to legalise foods made from hemp seeds could be the key to Australia's hemp industry taking off.
At Ashford in the New England region of New South Wales, they used to grow tobacco on the verdant plains of the Severn River. But now farmers like Leon Minus are growing industrial hemp.
Traditionally, my grandparents and parents grew tobacco here, and that was predominantly tobacco. And then the tobacco industry folded, and yeah, we're just looking at another industry to get up and running, and hopefully be good for the Ashford area.
With his wife Connie, they're growing about 6 hectares of hemp under licence, providing hurd for a growing market in masonry material for building.
We really like the crop. It's something that's been a really interesting industry, I guess, for us to get involved in over the last 3 years. We've learnt a lot about it in that time, and I guess we're always impressed with just how diverse the product can be, and it's something that we're hoping really does take off. As far as just the farming side of it goes, that we find it, because we've previously just grown lucerne here, that it's less time consuming, it uses a lot less water, so there's a lot of benefits to that side of it as well.
Even if it needs irrigation, hemp uses about 1/3 of the water needed to grow lucerne, and its low-cost benefits extend well beyond water savings. This crop was planted about 90 days ago. It's about 4 metres tall and is ready for harvest now. It's planted in beautiful alluvial soil, and there used to be free-range pigs running in this paddock. But other than that, there have been no inputs at all. No fertiliser, no pesticides, no herbicides, no fungicides, not even irrigation, just sunshine and rain. And the returns are attractive too. Industry advocates reckon a crop like this could fetch about $1,500 a tonne when its raw material is separated.
So the farmer is getting $500 for their herd, $500 for their fines, and then additionally they can get $500 for the short bast. And the short bast is something that can be fed into the fiberglass industry very readily. So its major market in Europe is in the automobile industry.
Clara Maraziki is a sustainability educator. She runs the Australian Hemp Masonry Company and has developed an award-winning formula for converting hemp hurd into a carbon-sequestering building material.
This is actually a carbon sink. So it's harvested carbon out of the air in the field that's been chopped up, and it's being put into this lime-based material and then locked up in that. So it's literally carbon locked into a wall.
Once the material sets, it undergoes carbonisation or petrification and continues to soak up carbon.
When we talk about Australia not being ready for a low-carbon future, we are actually ideally poised for a low-carbon future. This is probably one of the most powerful resources that we have available to us and one of the most powerful tools we have for addressing carbon. And so we've got this equation. We've got, you know, huge impact from just, if I only talk about the building sector, 40% of our carbon footprint in Australia from building. If we replace that, that's something that's immediately been addressed.
This prototype building is at Mountain View near Nimbin in the Northern Rivers of New South Wales. It's cheap, easy to build and has high thermal qualities and energy efficiency.
But just coming home and smelling it again is great, make you feel like you're doing something for Mother Nature.
Aboriginal community elder Liz Johnson says it's a perfect fit for remote Aboriginal communities.
I've searched a long time for what I think is a culturally appropriate building material for Aboriginal people. Since the change of cultures in our country, Aboriginal people have been imposed upon so far as building is concerned. And traditionally we lived in healthy living conditions. And all my life I've built houses out of different things. I've lived in different houses and I've seen the health of Aboriginal people deteriorate with the houses that are built specially for public housing. So I'm hoping that with our venture into the hemp housing that we'll be able to influence regional governments and eventually the federal government with a prototype of this sort of house.
Hemp is one of the oldest and most versatile crops in existence and was the world's most ubiquitous textile fibre before the invention of the cotton gin in the American South in the 19th century. It's still grown for fabric making, but until now, the process of separating the bast fibre from the stem has been expensive and burdened by archaic technology.
You cannot do anything with hemp until you have separated the hurd from the fibre. The fibre is in the bark on the outside, the hurd is the woody pith in the middle.
Victorian inventor Adrian Clark is working on a decortication machine which can process hemp in the field. It produces material that can be adapted to existing cotton spinning technology, and Mr. Clark says its potential is revolutionary.
Our method, theoretically, you could cut it today and be spinning it tomorrow, and we recover over 90% of the fibre. But we do it in a way that will spin in cotton machinery. They're making advances with cotton spinning machinery every day. Billions of dollars get spent on improving the cotton spinning. So we link into the most modern technology out of the oldest technology. We bring more fibre per hectare and we bring a better fibre. And it's not stained, it can be spun and dyed just like cotton. And most of the goods you'll see around in the hemp shops is actually a blend of cotton and hemp, so it gets the benefit of both.
This particular machine is just a prototype, but its Australian inventor thinks it could revolutionise textile production throughout the world.
So it'll be a drivable machine?
It'll be a drivable machine that harvests, and what comes out the back will be ready to go straight into a cotton system.
The BBC showed interest in Adrian Clark's invention after he moved to England 12 years ago when licensed hemp production was stopped in Victoria. Now that it's resumed, he's returned to Australia with a refined device that can fit onto a tractor.
We have developed a decorticator that is very small and very efficient, and it was actually designed to go inside a harvester so that the harvester immediately feeds it into the decorticator and separates the fibre from the hurd as it's going through.
He's now seeking investors, but says the biggest boost to Australia's fledgling hemp industry would be to follow the lead of countries like Britain, Canada and the United States and legalise hemp food.
To deny Australians the right to eat these very healthy foods and use the oil is just quite ridiculous. I can go into Sainsbury's or Tesco in London and buy hemp spaghetti, hemp salad dressing, hemp ice cream, hemp soaps. The foods are just there, hemp breads. It's all just there. And you can't buy it here. You can't consume it here.
Food Standards Australia and New Zealand has recently recommended that hemp seed foods be made legal in Australia, and this is now being considered by a ministerial council. It comes a decade after a similar recommendation was rejected. Food Standards Australia and New Zealand found there would be no public health and safety concerns with hemp as a food product. New Zealand accepted the advice, but the Howard government rejected it. It said legalising hemp as a food would send mixed messages about drug abuse, and it would be difficult for law enforcement agencies to police. Now, police agencies across Australia are objecting on the grounds that hemp food could corrupt roadside drug testing. And the New South Wales government says it might also encourage cannabis consumption, which is already the highest in the world.
They talk about undermining efforts made to eradicate cannabis. It'll send the wrong messages to people about the safe use of cannabis. But those arguments aren't getting anywhere overseas. Overseas, we're looking at markets that are just expanding tenfold.
You smoke an ounce of this and still walk home. Still drive home.
Andrew Cavasilis is one of 34 licensed hemp growers in New South Wales. He's specialising in hemp seed production. He says there's no THC in hemp seeds, and he believes fair trade laws will eventually open the hemp food market up in Australia.
We probably won't get up this time. I think what will happen is something like what happened in the US and Canada, where there'll be a trade issue, there'll probably be a court case, and the truth and facts will come out about the nutritional benefits of hemp seed, and the government will have no option but to facilitate the introduction of hemp seed food in Australia.
That's a seed, Stuart. Yeah, what sort of germinations do you look at?
Oh, you know, 80%, 90% plus generally. Sometimes, you know, fresh enough, it'll go 100%.
Stuart Larson is Australia's biggest organic soybean producer, processing about 7,000 tonnes a year. At his new stock feed and biochar facility at Malangani in the Northern Rivers of New South Wales, Mr Larson has been working with local hemp growers. He believes there's huge potential for broadacre hemp seed production if the government legalises hemp foods.
You know, we can't take it any further until basically that happens. I mean, we can do the trial areas and the growing of the crop and even the methodology of how we do that, but we need that tick for it to happen. If we look at what the world says we're going to have a food shortage in years to come, I mean, it's a crop we can grow well here, it appears, and it's suited to this environment as well. And I guess our interest is in taking it to a commercial crop, in that using standard equipment that we're using now in growing soy, and also to be a rotation with soy, in soy being a nitrogen crop, and the N level for growing food-grade hemp is certainly a plus.
Even on a small scale like this, the economics of hemp seed are impressive. Andrew Cavasilis says a 1 hectare crop will yield about 1.5 tonnes of seed worth up to $6,000.
Well, that's what keeps my enthusiasm up, because it is a high potential plant. As a broadacre crop, it integrates well into what farmers are doing anyway. And when you're growing a crop that, you know, in effect can produce oil at the same quality as fish oil in terms of its omega ratios, yeah, why wouldn't you be going for it? I think what happens is people haven't got a grasp of the full facts, and politically, I don't think there's any votes for any politician to say that, you know, our kids should be eating hemp foods.
At Ashford, Connie Minus is hoping to integrate her fat lamb production with hemp growing, but under her current licence conditions, this is forbidden.
We're personally interested in being able to use it as fodder for the stock, because we grow lucerne and hemp here, and hemp being so high in protein, we're really interested in being able to combine the two and make pellets and chaff available for stock, and we believe that they'll do really well on that for fat lambs that we've got at the moment. We're really keen to try that, but we can't do that until the government basically, you know, approves the use of hemp as a human consumption, which you know, has been approved in many other parts around the world.
Hemp growers are strictly monitored, and their crops are tested regularly to ensure they have low THC levels. But growers say there's an imbalance between compliance and technical advice and support.
For instance, in New South Wales, the hemp issue is being handled by Invasive Species Department of the New South Wales Department of Primary Industries. That's a department that's in the business of eradicating plants, not fostering an industry to catch on to what the rest of the world is doing. In compliance and regulation, yeah, they'll be out there, they'll be testing your plants, they'll tell you what you can't do, but in terms of any support to make representations to the Minister, it's just not there.
The New South Wales Government says it's planning a roundtable meeting with the hemp industry's major players in the coming months to formulate a strategic plan. Leon Minus says it's the kind of support that could create a thriving local industry and see Ashford prosper again as it did during the heyday of the tobacco industry.
Obviously we need to promote it in the area and get the community on board and, you know, the other farmers to be able to have enough crops and that growing to cater for the market, and eventually get a processing plant of some sort in Ashford so we can create some employment for the future and for the town and sort of turn things around. We've lost a lot of industry, lost the coal mine and the power station, tobacco industry, so it's basically a retirement village. Old people are good, but we need some young people too, and we'll need to be able to keep them around if they have the will to stay.
Is the fact that freedom is very popular. There is no doubt. Not only is freedom popular, is that freedom works. The bureaucracy doesn't work. The politicians can't do it. You know, they talk about energy problems, and sure we have a problem because the government's too much involved and they impede so much of what we try to do. You take, for instance, what do? They tax us so that they can subsidize ethanol from corn. And then what do? It turns out that ethanol from sugarcane is much better, but they don't get the same benefit. But lo and behold, they have found out that the best source of ethanol is from hemp. But, you know, we're from the government and we're here to help you. So we don't want you to mess around with hemp. You might smoke that stuff. I found out that if you want to smoke and get marijuana out of hemp, you have to have a marijuana cigarette as big as a telephone pole. And then you might get something. But it's back to the saying about why do they regulate our personal habits anyway? Why don't we allow them to decide what's good for us?